Hello, I'm Dr. Angie McCartney.
And I'm Ruth McCartney.
Welcome to TeaFlix,
where each episode's intimate conversation features a fascinating guest across the spectrum of Beatles world, pop culture, Grammy winners, the music industry, chefs, producers, music stars, actors, and more. So bottoms up and join us as they spill the tea on TeaFlix. Ta-da! And it looks like, once again, we are live.
Jolly good. I'm always pleased to hear that every Tuesday. I am live.
I'm pleased to hear it every day, actually.
So I'm still here.
And what's your secret?
Keep breathing.
Just keep breathing.
Just
That's
keep
the
breathing.
one.
That's the one.
So welcome to TeaFlix, folks. I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to jump on here. And thank you for joining us once again on TeaFlix Tuesday, brought to you by Mrs. McCartney's Teas. We have a fascinating lady with us today. She's a teacher, an author, a guru, a student, and a personal close confidant of the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, of all people. And her name is Susan Shumsky. She's an author and spiritual teacher who spent over 2 decades studying with the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of TM, Transcendental Meditation. She lived in his ashrams, including in India, and worked closely with him as part of his inner circle. Susan was deeply involved in the TM movement, even serving as a meditation teacher and instructor. Mm-hmm. Her experiences intersect with the Beatles during their famous 1968 stay at the ashram in Rishikesh, which we all know. And while she was not there at the exact time the Beatles attended, she later gained insider knowledge of their time with the Maharishi. In her book, Maharishi and Me, Seeking Enlightenment with the Beatles Guru, she shares behind-the-scenes details about Maharishi's teachings, the influence he had on the Beatles, and the controversies that led to their eventual split from him. She offers insight into the broader TM movement and its impact on Western culture. Her first-hand experiences and deep immersion in Maharishi's world gave her a unique perspective on how he shaped not only the Beatles, but also the global rise of meditation and Eastern spirituality. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, big digital round of applause for Susan Shumsky. Welcome.
Oh, good morning, Susan. Hi. Welcome.
Thanks for making the time. And we were just talking, hopefully you're in Arkansas at the moment at a friend's. The last weekend's weather didn't affect you where you are personally, right? Hopefully.
Right. We were safe where she is, which is in Northwest Arkansas in Rogers.
Great.
Yeah.
So how and when did you first become interested in TM? And was it the brand that we know as the Maharishi that drew your attention first, or did you come in through kind of a side door?
Really, nobody knew about it at the time. I was a hippie. I was a flower child in the 60s. And those of us who were flower children, it wasn't just all about sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah.
We were seeking spiritual awakening.
Yes.
And the Beatles were too, by the way, at the same time that I was. And I was in the San Francisco Bay Area. And our gurus at the time were Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, who later became Ram Dass. And they said we should turn on, tune in, and drop out. And then we can reach nirvana through LSD. So I tried that. It didn't work out too well. Psychotic breakdown. But in any case, I did take LSD a few times, and I did have some interesting experiences with it. But I wanted to learn real meditation. I was seeking nirvana. I was seeking enlightenment. So I found out, a friend took me to the Transcendental Meditation Center, and there was no teacher there. The Beatles, no one knew about TM at the time, but I waited, and I finally got initiated about 9 months later. And That was 1967, before the Beatles.
Good grief. Yeah, because 67 was really early. I know when it sort of came into our household back in Liverpool, it probably would have been 69-ish. I was probably 9 or 10. And I didn't understand why you couldn't go and talk to the grown-ups after they got up and got out of bed. They just had to sit quietly in their rooms. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with these people? I still cannot quiet my mind. I've tried and tried and tried. I wish I could.
Yeah.
But I'll think, oh, did I leave the washing in the dryer? Or is that next door's dog barking, or the one across the street? I just can't even go there. But I wish I could. Maybe you can teach me one of these days.
Yes. it is possible for the mind to be quiet, I recommend guided meditation because that gives the mind something to do and keeps you on track. So that's the kind of meditation I teach.
Yeah. So your book, Maharishi and Me, that caused a great deal of interest, didn't it? Tell us about how you came to put that together.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was in New York City and one of the editors at a big publishing house said, "This is the book I'm interested in. I want you to write your memoir." So I started doing that. And then very promptly, was not long after that she was fired. So there I was writing a memoir. That was 1998. It was actually published finally in 2018. So that was 20 years later. It took me 20 years to get that book written and published.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the biggest misconception about the Beatles' experience with the Maharishi? I mean, for me, I think I hear a lot of fans think they just took a very long holiday and did nothing, but they were seriously busy while they were there, weren't they?
Oh, yeah.
They were very seriously interested in reaching nirvana, enlightenment, and we all were. And so they came across Maharishi because of Patty Boyd. She had seen a little ad in the newspaper in the London Times, and then she went and learned. She and a friend of hers went and learned, and then she told George about it, and he said, "Oh, I want my own mantra,"
Of course, he still got one.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
On the other side, he still has one. So and then August 24th of 1967, they visited Maharishi. They went to see his lecture at the Park Hotel in London, and then they met with him afterwards. And they said to Maharishi, "We've been seeking a highly spiritual experience.
Mm-hmm.
We tried LSD, but that didn't get us there." And Maharishi said to them, "It's laudable that the youth of today want spiritual experiences, but drugs, that's not the answer." He said, "You should learn transcendental meditation from one of my teachers in London and then become TM teachers." And both did that. They said, "Oh, no, we want you to teach us, Maharishi." And then, according to George, he said, "Got any mantras?" I don't know if that really happened, but
that sounds like a typical Scouse thing to say, doesn't it?
Yeah. So Maharishi said, "Okay, well, tomorrow I'm going to go to a retreat in Bangor, North Wales, and do you want to come with me?" They said, "Yeah, we'll go." They went on the train. They went on public transportation.
I remember we were there. We went too.
We went to Bangor, yes.
We went to Bangor.
You went?
Yeah.
We did, and we had lunch in a sort of cafeteria kind of place. Long wooden tables, I remember. Yeah. And a strong, pungent smell of something. I don't know what. I didn't know what then.
Let's just say it was patchouli.
And that was the day that when we were leaving to come home, we were in the car ready to drive away. And another George Harrison, not the Beatle, but there was a journalist named George Harrison, and he was on the trip with them. And he came out and shouted from the stairway at the steps outside the building, "Jim."
Paul.
Paul he had his head stuck in the car window to say goodbye to his dad. And he shouted, "Paul, Brian's on the phone. He wants to talk to you about tomorrow."
Oh,
well, the famous tomorrow was the day that,
Brian died.
Monday the 27th.
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So we know
that he wasn't intending to kill himself.
No.
Because he was making plans to get a train to Bangor the next day.
He was going to come up because it was a bank holiday Monday, and Brian was going to take, because it was a day off.
Yeah.
He was going to come up by train, just like the boys did, to Bangor to meet Maharishi and, hang out with the boys and just find out what was going on. And by the time we got home to Heswell on Wirral,
the phone was ringing as I was opening the front door, and it was Louise Harrison, George's mom. And she was shrieking down the phone, "Angie, have you heard the news? Brian has shot himself."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And of course, that was anything but the truth.
Yeah.
But she had heard that on Radio Caroline, the ship that was outside the 12-mile limit.
Yeah.
That's where that news first broke.
So yeah, Bangor was. But there's a picture actually. If you look, there's a picture of me in a little sort of a smock. Paul and I are holding hands, and I'm in a little smock, and I'm looking up at somebody in the university
I'll find
windows.
it and send
yeah,
it
we'll send
to
it to
you.
you.
Yeah.
Because it's that very day you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so it was presumably after that they packed up and went to India, right?
Well, that was in February. Bangor, North Wales, that was back in August of 1967.
Right.
And then they went to India in February. Well, they arrived there February of 1968.
That's right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And how long were they there exactly?
Okay, so Ringo stayed about 1 week, simply because he had his very young babies at home,
Right.
and he could just stay there with the babies at home. And also he had a problem with the peritonitis that he had had as a child. So he brought an entire suitcase with him of Heinz beans,
Baked beans.
the beans, and he said, "Oh, that's a plug for you," when he talks about it. So yeah, and Maureen didn't like the insects.
No.
And in fact, there's a kind of a legend that Paul said that she was held hostage for 2 hours by a fly until Ringo came back to kill it.
Yeah.
So she hated the insects, and there was it was a jungle. There are insects there. And then Paul stayed for about a month. He had to leave because he was there with Jane Asher, and she had a theatrical commitment back in London, so they had to leave. However, John and George stayed until April 10th.
Gosh, that's a
lot. From February 16th, when they arrived, 16th around that time, they were there quite a while, and they were very serious about it.
Wow.
Yeah, I can remember that when they came back, I was in hospital. I'd had a bad asthma attack, and I was in a local hospital in Peswell. And Paul and Jane came to visit me in the hospital, much to the excitement and the consternation of the nurses and the staff, They didn't stay long, but I was getting out of the hospital the next day, but they just popped in to see me.
Brought gifts from India.
Yes, Paul brought me a beautiful little handbag, which I still have, an evening bag with embroidery on it. Yeah.
And me an ivory necklace, which I no longer have, which is fortunate because I don't believe in ivory. But when I'm 7, 8 years old, it was and it was a big chunky, Indian carvings and stuff. It's funny, isn't it? The little things that you remember. And then when we get to talk to an expert like you, we suddenly remember, remember that handbag? Remember that note? Remember that? Yeah. That's what's so great about, being able to hook up with folks like yourself and, with all of the years and years of research you've done, it's little kernels and nuggets of memories that it pops up for us as well. It's fantastic.
Right, yeah.
So John and George stayed there until April, right around. Would that be the time that George became fascinated with sitar?
He became fascinated with sitar in 1966.
Oh, wow.
In fact, even 1965, I think that's when they were filming Help. Okay. So Help had an Indian soundtrack. It had Indian music as its soundtrack.
That's right.
Yeah. And there were some Indian musicians that were playing in the restaurant scene. And George noticed them playing, and he got very curious about the sitar. He picked it up and said, "Oh, that's a funny sound." He kind of plucked it. And also on the stage of Help, when they were riding around on the bicycles, I don't know if you recall that scene from Help.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They were riding around bicycles, and all of a sudden, this Indian yogi trots up to them. He was wearing orange robes, and he trots up and he gives them all a book, a signed copy of the book, four books, one for each of them. And it was a Hatha Yoga book. It was illustrated book about yoga postures. So he gave them the book, and that's the first time they ever really knew or heard about yoga or anything like that, or ever met a yogi.
Yeah, Paul still does yoga to this day. He does hot yoga, and he's incredibly gifted that he can do headstands. And I know at 83. I mean, it's like good grief. Okay, I can
I'm lucky if I can get out of the
I was
chair.
going to say, I'm lucky if I can get off the couch. All this time, I thought it was sitting on the couch was making me fat, and figured out it's not the couch, it's the fridge.
Yeah, Susan, you've just sparked another memory for me, and that was the bicycle scene in Help. We were out there. It was actually my honeymoon.
One of the bicycle scenes,
Yeah.
the one in
Yeah.
the Bahamas.
And when they did A Man's Got to Do What a Man's Got to Do, and Brian had sent a car for us to go to the set and watch what was going on. And this one scene took all day, so many resets and retakes. And it was only then I began to realize what the film business was about, like hurry up and wait.
Yeah, there's a lot of hurry up and wait when it comes to
Oh,
film.
very much so, yeah.
Yeah, there's a famous picture of me sitting on
a bicycle.
on a bike with
That's
Paul
right, yeah.
outside the Hertz rent-a-car thing. And if you look closely, it says the Nassau Bicycle Rental Company on the.
Oh my goodness.
So
Where?
Jeff, our good friend Jeff Jackson from Marina is asking, what songs were written? And now this will touch in on another one of Susan's books, The Inner Light, which goes very deeply into song meanings and title meanings and all of that stuff. So Jeff's wondering what songs were written in India. And you'd wonder, with George and John staying an extra 2 months, that there weren't a lot of Lennon-Harrison songs that would have come out of that. You would assume that they'd write together, but
didn't seem to happen then.
Didn't work that way, right?
No. Practically the entire White Album was written in India when they were with Maharishi. Wow. Yeah. So
and Dear Prudence has a story, right?
Dear Prudence, yes, of course, that was one of them. Prudence, obviously, that was Mia Farrow's sister. She was very devoted to meditation. She had learned 2-3 years prior to going to India. She kept applying to courses. Same with me. I kept applying. She and I both kept applying to go to India, to learn to be teachers. But we kept getting rejected because you had to be 24 years old and a college graduate in order to be qualified.
Oh, really?
So you're too young.
But finally, once Mia got interested in meeting Maharishi, then he accepted both of them. He said they could both come to India. And in fact, he flew with them, with Prudence and with Mia, to India. And that was in January of 1968.
Yeah.
And so Mia and her sister were there before the Beatles arrived. They were there in January.
Didn't know that.
Prudence was very devoted. She just wanted to meditate all the time. And well, what can I say? Prudence had some problem with drugs when she was a teenager.
Okay.
And so, unfortunately, because she was meditating and wouldn't come out and was just very introverted, there was some problems. Some mental problems happened. But Maharishi took care of her. He asked them to bring her to him on a daily basis. And within 2-3 weeks, she was cured. She came out. She was happy.
Great.
But Maharishi had put her in a study group with John and George. And so they were supposedly taking care of her. And they wrote that song. She never heard them sing it, by the way.
Wow.
Prudence, until a year later when her mother played it for her.
Wow.
Was
Elizabeth is asking, do you have a personal favorite song from the White Album? And if so, does it have a special story?
I really love Blackbird. I think that's a beautiful song. That's one of my favorites. I always love that song. And there's a couple meanings to that. When Paul first came back from India, he said he had heard a blackbird in the early morning, and that is
at the foot of my grandmother's bed. It was my grandmother that told him about it, and he went and got Mike's Grundig tape recorder and sat on the end of my grandmother's bed. She was staying with us at Rembrandt. It was about 3 a.m. He came home. He said, "Hey, Edie, are you awake?" She said, "Well, bloody well am now."
I am now.
And he said, "Well, what keeps you awake?" She said, "There's this sodding blackbird. It's trying to get the grapes in Jim's greenhouse, and it comes every night about 3 o'clock, and it sings its head off, and it wakes me up. So he recorded it. It's not the recording on the actual song, but we have the original demo cassette where over and over he says, "This one's dedicated to Edith," who was her mum. Yeah.
Lovely. And
Yeah,
then
we love that song too.
later he decided he would talk about the civil rights movement, and then he would associate it with that.
Yeah, well, PR people handle things, don't they, and manipulate stories and so on.
Marketing managers at labels.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but he actually announced it himself. I saw the film where he was at a concert and he announced that that's what it was about.
Right. Yeah. Well, and happenstance and timing. Yes, absolutely. 1968. There was no finer time for the civil rights movement. So. Yeah, very interesting. So I'm just looking up the chat here for other questions. But so did their time? Do you think how did their time in Rishikesh influence the actual product? Influence the songs?
Well, it influenced them because every song that they wrote there practically was about something that happened or about Maharishi. For example, the song "Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except for Me and My Monkey." That particular song is more about Maharishi than any other song they ever wrote. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true, because in that song, all right, so Maharishi, whenever he would want to meet with someone, he would say to them, come, or he'd say, come on, come, or come on. And then I'd say probably 100 times a day, Maharishi would say, "It's such a joy. It's such a joy. It's such a joy." Okay, so there's that. And then another one of his little catchphrases he always used to say was, "Take it easy. Take it as it comes. Take it easy. Take it as it comes." Okay, so there's the lyrics to the song.
Yeah.
Wow.
Inside is out, outside in. That would be about meditation. I know people think it's about drugs, but no, it's about meditation. They were there meditating. They were serious. They were into it, and they wrote songs about it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Right. Our friend Paul Moody down in Playa del Rey is asking, what's the thought about what's your considered opinion about Sexy Sadie?
Well, it's no opinion. It's exactly what happened. So they were leaving. George and John were waiting for the taxi cabs to come because they were leaving in a huff, and Alexis Martis, Magic Alex, had gone to get the taxis. So it was a time when the Kumbh Mela was happening in Hardwar, right next door. You couldn't get any taxis. There were millions and millions and millions of people there at the Kumbh Mela.
Sure.
So actually, Alexis, he had to go all the way to Dehradun to get a taxi cab and come back. They're sitting there waiting. So John wrote this song, Maharishi, what have you done? Actually, expletives. Maharishi, expletive. That was the lyrics.
Yeah.
And then George said to him, "That's ridiculous. You can't sing that." So he changed it to Maharishi, what have you done? You made a fool of everyone, blah, blah, blah. And then changed it to Sexy Sadie.
That's wild. Yeah, I mean, you said Dehradun, which brings up another side story. Our regular viewers will know one of the Michelin star chefs that we are proud to represent for media and PR. It was born in Dehradun, and his name is Mayank Istwal, and he's from the Michelin starred Musafir, which means traveler, in Houston, Texas. And when we first met, of course, he looked at my last name. He's like, McCartney, Beatles, and he was at a pivotal moment in his life. He was working at an Italian restaurant in Goa, and very, very talented chef. And an Italian guy said, "This is fantastic. This is the best whatever gnocchi I've ever had. I want to meet the chef." And he came out of the kitchen to meet this thrilled Italian diner. And the guy refused to shake his hand. And he said, "You're not the chef. I want to meet the Italian who cooked this." He said, "Well, chef, I'm from Dehradun and I cooked this and what have you." And he said, "No brown boy knows how to cook like this."
Oh my gosh.
So right there and then, chef took off his apron. He quit his job. He sailed from Goa back to the mainland. He went home to Dehradun. He got into this is probably the mid-70s. He got into his brother's car with the wind-down windows and the AM radio and took off for Rishikesh to go and, find some peace and meditate. And the George Harrison song of his birthplace, Dada Doon, came because they play it on the radio in India. It was never released, but it came on, and he's like, it's a sign to go where the Beatles went. It's a sign to go to Rishikesh. It's a sign to get my life back on track. And ultimately, he left India, and now he's a Michelin-starred chef, and we represent him. So you want to talk about full circle?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. So the song Dehradun that George wrote, he was criticizing the people who weren't taking their meditations seriously, who would go run to Dehradun and eat meat, run to Dehradun to shop, and hang out there. So that's what, maybe some of the wives were doing that. Different people were doing that. And he was criticizing them for leaving the ashram and going to Dehradun. So that's what the lyrics are about.
I didn't realize what the song was about. So it was kind of like going into town. I'm going for a pint of milk, but you spend all day, right? You come back 8 hours later.
Exactly. Shopping for saris, shopping for whatever.
How interesting.
That is fascinating.
But isn't it a small world when, Ruth is working?
With the chef from Dehradun of all.
Yeah.
That's absolutely crazy.
And there was also a music store in Dehradun.
Yeah.
The proprietor there was requested to come to play for Patty's birthday that took place while the Beatles were in India. So he came and brought his little band and brought some Indian instruments and actually brought a dilruba for Patty for her birthday present. It was her birthday present to Patty, this dilruba, and she actually had been studying to play it. She had already gotten it earlier. She had gotten a dilruba, and Batish, who's a famous musician from India, he taught her to play, and he said she was quite good. She was
good.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know Patty was musical. She just had a birthday this week. She looks incredible.
Yes.
I can't believe the age they're attributing to her. I won't say it out loud, but oh my goodness, amazing.
It's got an 8 in there, though.
It doesn't have an 8 now. Yes, it does have one of those in it. So it's quite amazing. So having spent 2 decades in the ashrams and then 6 years personally interacting with Maharishi, how did your experiences there either shape or change your understanding of Beatles music? Or did you just always get where the White Album was coming from? Just intrinsically, just knew? Yeah,
I think that's more like it, is that I understood what they were talking about. Like, for example, Mother Nature's Son and Father Nature, for example. In my book, The Inner Light, I actually included the lecture that Paul and John had listened to that inspired them to write those songs. And it was about Mother Nature, because Maharishi often would talk about Mother Nature.
Yeah.
Support of nature, Mother Nature.
Mother Nature's son.
In tune with nature. So that was, he was talking about that. And he also talked about being in tune or not in tune with Mother Nature, nature support or not having nature support. These are some of his phrases, his catchwords that he would use all the time.
Right.
So we knew, obviously, okay, that was about that. And other songs that we just knew what he was talking about, like Revolution is about the Maharishi effect. It's called the Maharishi effect.
Wow.
And the idea of revolution was Maharishi used to talk about how we could create world peace. In fact, that was how I got attracted to learning transcendental meditation, because they talked about attaining world peace. And, I, as a child of the 60s, as someone who was a child of the Cold War, I was terrified that bombs were going to fall on my head, especially because we lived so close to an Air Force base.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I heard flights going over my head all the time. I was afraid as if the atom bomb's going to come.
Yeah,
that's right.
So Maharishi said he wanted to create world peace through meditation. That's the reason I signed up. I wanted that.
Yeah.
So
If only that were happening,
Right
consistently.
now.
Well, not just right now, but there's wars all over the world all the time. For the last 50 years, there's been a war somewhere in the world every day, whether it's Sudan or Ghana or, the Houthis or the Middle East or wherever it is. It's just, I'm not a mother. I don't have kids, but I've never been able to understand how people. I always was of the notion that people want a safer world for their kids and their grandkids. They want their kids to go to sleep at night with no bombs falling, a roof over their head, something in their belly, sustainable food-wise. And so how people actually grow up and go into jobs that vote for wars just astonishes me. I mean, thank heavens we have our, brave men and women in uniform, and God bless them. But it's just a sad state of affairs that we have to have defense forces anywhere, really.
That's very true. So Maharishi used to always say, in order for the forest to be green, the trees must be green. In order for the world to be at peace, individuals must be at peace. So his idea was that through meditation, we could create a world at peace, individuals learning meditation. And that's the goal. So this idea, Maharishi actually, he would send groups of meditators to war-torn areas or to crime-ridden areas, and they would find that the war subsided or that the down, and that was called the Maharishi effect. So that's what John was talking about in the song Revolution. He was talking about got to change your mind instead. You can't do it through treaties, through legislation. Maharishi used to always say that. So that's where that idea came from.
That's amazing. What year was Maharishi born?
1908.
Gosh, so he was about the same age as my dad, 6 years younger.
Yeah.
Jim was born in 1902.
I'm sorry. It was 1912.
1912. Okay. So my dad and Maharishi were
10 years
apart.
Yeah.
And today is 49 years.
49 years since Jim passed away.
Since Jim went to get his angel wings. So good on you, Daddy. It's funny that we're talking about all things spiritual on the anniversary, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that's the way the universe likes it.
Yes. But with so much mythology surrounding the Beatles and the trip to India, is there a lesser known story that you might want to tell us that we'd find surprising? Just something.
The Bungalow Bill, the Bungalow Bill story?
Sure.
Yes.
You do know the Bungalow.
I think I do, but maybe I'm under a misapprehension of the stories behind the songs, like some of our guests arguing in the chat here.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, Bungalow Bill is kind of interesting. His name was Rick Cook, and he came to visit his mom, who's Nancy Cook de Herrera, and he came with his rifle. He wanted to go hunting. All these things I'm saying are lyrics from the song.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they went out on the elephants, and then they went over from the elephants. They went onto a munch, which is a platform on the tree. And then Nancy spotted the tiger, and Rick killed the tiger. And then they came back to the ashram, and obviously it's for taxidermy. This is killing for fun. That's what they did. And then they came back to the ashram, and they went immediately to Maharishi's bungalow. And why in the world they would think that the vegetarian, Hindu, strict Orthodox yogi would want to hear about a tiger kill is beyond me. So they are telling Maharishi about the tiger kill, and Nancy, Maharishi is glaring at Nancy the whole time.
Don't blame him.
Yeah. And then Rick, the son, asked Maharishi, is it a sin that I killed the tiger?
Yeah.
These are all lyrics from his song.
Sure.
And Nancy butted in, and she said, oh, it was either the tiger or us. So, in Bungalow Bill, in the lyrics, his mother butted in, and it would have been us instead of him. And I don't know. I've got the lyrics here, but I can.
Yeah, but I mean, the tiger didn't wander into the ashram looking for people. They went out into the jungle to find it, right? I mean, so the shoe's kind of on the other foot. If you're on an elephant, in a jungle, you're probably going to find a tiger at some point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was very purposeful. It wasn't like the tiger was going to kill them. So it's all in the lyrics.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
No, it's absolutely wild. So, from your research and or personal experience, the Beatles had a break with Maharishi, right?
That's
What are you allowed to say about that? Let's just say.
I'm allowed to say everything about it. So okay, there were several reasons why they had the break. One of the reasons was a film deal that went south. So Maharishi had made a contract with Neil Aspinall about doing a film about the transcendental meditation and about Maharishi's guru. And so Neil came to India, the contract was made, went back, and they were going to bring a film crew there. But the fact was that Maharishi had already made a contract with someone else, with 4-Star Productions. And Charlie Lutz, who is the head of the TM organization, he arrived in India with a contract from 4-Star Productions, signed contract that gave exclusive rights to film Maharishi for the next 5 years. And this was pre-Beatles. This was back in 1967 or something like that. That contract was signed.
Wow.
So Maharishi was warned, and he said, "Oh, it's okay if everyone has a contract, we can all work together for Guru Dev or something like that."
Right.
So, and I'll explain Guru Dev later. But so they obviously these double contracts were going on.
That's a problem.
One morning, John opened the door to his bungalow. He's bleary-eyed, he's bedheaded. He opens the door, and what does he see in front of him in the courtyard? He sees a cameraman and a director who's yelling, "Action!" So he and John and George got pretty angry. They refused to leave their rooms.
Yeah.
They wouldn't go to the lecture hall where the lights and cameras were set up for filming. And they left very soon after that.
Mm.
That was one of the
What a shame that through just bad business management, bad paperwork, that they lost their relationship like that. Such a shame.
That was one of the reasons. Another reason was there was a woman named Rosalind Bonas, and she was there on the course. She was from Brooklyn, New York at the time. And Maharishi made a pass at her. And Maharishi had also made a pass at Mia Farrow, which she wrote about in her biography.
Right. I'd heard that.
Of course, that's what hit the headlines, wasn't it, around the world?
Yeah.
Those stories, more than anything else. Yeah.
Right. So they were kind of horrified by that. And
but
what happened is when John came back from India and Paul said to him, "Well, what happened?" And John said, "Well, we can't go following him. He's just an old lech." And Paul said, "Well, what happened?" And John said he made a pass at Mia Farrow and Rosalind. And John said, "So what? So what?" It was his. He said, "Well, it's not. No vow is there." Well, okay. So that was Paul's perspective, but from the perspective of the Maharishi's secretaries, Maharishi told them to all be celibate, and they were being celibate. And they, when they found out that Maharishi had sex with several women, they said, "Oh, well, Mahesh is getting all the action. We don't like that." So, really, I mean, so yeah.
So was there or is there a vow when you are a Maharishi title?
I'm glad you mentioned that because
is there a vow of celibacy or no?
Okay, so Maharishi on his passport, and the passport's in my book. You can see the passport, and it says Bal Brahmachari Mahesh Yogi. What that means is life celibate Mahesh Yogi. So he claimed to be a celibate, life celibate.
I see.
He also said that he always claimed, I'm a monk, I'm a life celibate. But in
Wow.
fact, he wasn't. And I know this to be a fact because I know 20 women who either Maharishi had sex with or tried to have sex with.
Right. Well, if he's a red-blooded male, shit happens.
He's a male, yeah. He's a red-blooded.
Yeah.
He's not, he wasn't a deity or pretending to be a deity. He's a human and he's a man.
As a matter of fact, Paul said that when he had his conversation with John when they came back. Paul said he told us that he was not a god and that he's just a meditation teacher.
Right. Yeah, that's
was
the
Paul.
spin I would put on it. And you also have to remember that it's 50, 60 years ago, and we didn't have all of this political correctness and Me Too movement stuff that we have now. And so if a man is out there in the middle of Rishikesh and, the urge takes him, he's going to ask a lady nicely. If she says yes, she says yes. If she says no, she says no. I'm kind of with John Lennon on the what's the big deal. But
I kind of am too, if you want to know the truth. I
Yeah.
really am. Because
Yeah.
it was all consensual. I mean, I never,
right.
no one ever, all the women that told me, there's several of them. There's Judith Bork, there's Linda Williams Pierce, there's Rosalind, there's several of them. And they were all consensual.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Well,
like it was
end
rape.
of story. Yeah.
And if everyone's over 18 and no one was screaming and no one called the police, I'm kind of with John Lennon. Where's the big?
Oh, you're
you know,
starting something.
I know I'm going
now.
to start a shit fight, but that's whatever.
Well, me too.
and
It's
You also
very-
have to remember, like I said, it was 60 years ago, and people approach people in different
Attitudes
ways.
are
They made
very
a pass.
different,
They,
yeah.
they hit on people because otherwise, how do we go from woolly mammoths to 8.5 billion humans if people weren't making passes at each other?
Uh-huh.
I know.
Nicely put,
Right?
Ruth.
I mean-
Nicely put.
Agree. It's hard. How do people ever get together anymore?
So you lecture and you speak on all of these subjects in your 2 books. Can you grab your books and show them to the camera so that our folks can see the titles and know where to order them? And we have going across the bottom of the crawl.
yeah.
There we go. So we have The Inner Light and we have Maharishi and Me, both of which are available on Susan's website, which is going across the bottom very shortly. But say it out loud. It's Divine Revelation.
drsusan.org. Much easier to remember.
Oh, drsusan.org. Now there's a fabulous domain name. That's great. So tell us about where you're going to be actually in person in Beatle world. You were just in Florida.
Yeah, I was just at Beatles on the Beach in Florida. That was fun.
Not bad. Yeah.
Fantastic.
New Jersey for the Beatles Fest. That'll be 27th of March.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Jersey. Then I will be at the Chicago's Beatle Fest in August.
August. That's right.
Also,
Super.
I'll also be in Liverpool.
Oh, great.
Beatles Convention. I'll be speaking there and vending there.
Fantastic. Well, make sure you pay, if you're not already booked to stay, make sure you pay a visit to the Casbah Suites. Our friend Rogue Best and his brother Pete Best have a fabulous 10-room boutique hotel now. And they also own the Liverpool Beatles Museum. If your books aren't in there already, they should be. And you've been to Liverpool before though, right?
I have been to Liverpool. I've been to the Beatles convention before, but I never was invited to speak. I'm so excited this time I get to give a PowerPoint presentation, and that'll be really fun.
That'll be a fun
Good.
time.
Yes.
So the best place that folks can find you is drsusan.org, SUSAN, correct?
Yes. Dr.
Great.
Susan.
And they can see you in New Jersey, Chicago, and Liverpool. You're everything everywhere all at once, my girl.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's fabulous. It's across the universe you are.
Good title for
My
a film.
favorite Beatles song, Across the Universe.
There you go. I love that.
Yeah. And that one, Maharishi Jai Guru Deva. Maharishi, whenever he would greet anyone, he would never say hello, goodbye, have a nice day. Instead, he'd put his hands together in pranams. He'd say, Jai Guru Dev, He did that 100 times a day. Jai Gurudev. So that's where that came from. And Jai Gurudev means glory to the divine preceptor, glory to the great guru, the great teacher. And he was saying that about his teacher every time he did that. He was talking about his teacher, Brahmananda Saraswati. Swami Brahmananda Saraswati was Gurudev. Jai Gurudev.
He had this funny little voice, I will say.
And then he tacked an om on the end of it. So John.
And then his laugh. I wish his laugh was a ringtone. He had the sweetest little giggle.
He had a hilarious giggle.
Yeah. And you could just, he was just oozing joy.
Yeah.
Which is what the world needs now, is more joy, right?
Absolutely.
The first I ever met was Maharishi.
Wow. That's nice to hear. That's really good. And, he had, through George and through the Beatles, he had such an influence on worldwide culture. There wouldn't be Hathananda Yoga Studios in Venice, California without him, I'm sure.
Absolutely. When he came to the West in 1959, there was no yoga, mantra, avatar, ashram. These terms, karma, they didn't exist in the West. Within 10 years, with a little help from his friends, the Beatles, these became household words.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, they are all in our lexicon, aren't they, all the time?
Absolutely, yes.
That's fantastic. Well, our regular guests will know that our honored and very special guests, such as yourselves, get their own personalized limerick from the Limerick Lady.
Oh, my goodness.
And are you sitting comfortably? Then
You
shall
are? Good.
begin.
A 1, 2, 3. We offer our thanks to Miss Sue, whose Guru days gave her a view. At the ashram she stayed, where the Beatles once played, and her books tell us stories so true.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! Well, thank you.
Thank
for
you
being with us today, Susan.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And look for Dr. Susan everywhere at her website, drsusan.org. And we will see you all of a sudden. And thank you so much for carving out some valuable time for us today.
And thank you for inviting me. It was a great joy. It's such a joy.
Such a joy. Exactly. In the words of you-know-who.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay.
All right, kids, we'll see you all of a sudden.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to TeaFlix, and check out Dr. Angie's books, Organic Teas and CBD, at mrsmccartneysteas.com. Toodle pip!